So welcome to another episode. Today we have a special guest, Casey Williams from Full Circle Soil Health. And today we're going to talk about Soil Food Web topics as well as his journey through the Soil Food Web curriculum. Thanks for joining me today, Casey.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
So kind of wanted to start on a little bit of background with you. Would you like to tell us about how you got involved with Soil Food Web and what you do now that you've graduated the consultant training program?
Yeah, so give you a quick background of myself in the ag world. I was living in Chicago for a while in the restaurant industry, and then I moved to South Texas, which is where I grew up, and my family's got a farm down there. So I really got into ag, and like a lot of people, it just kind of blossomed. Went from organic ag to like regen and permaculture, gourmet mushrooms, microgreens, aquaponics, like on and on.
Everything.
And then, finally found the Soil Food Web and kind of came literally full circle with the soil.
What year was that?
The year that I joined, it was about 6 years ago. So 2017, late 2017 maybe, is when I joined the Soil Food Web. And so I've been doing this soil health work in particular for about 6 years. And yeah, so what I do day to day now is I work on a farm part-time here in Albuquerque. It's actually a farm-to-table restaurant, and they have a piece of land connected, and we take care of the land here. And then I've got two small businesses as well. So one is Full Circle Soil Health, dealing with soil food web work, and the other is called Vital Grow Inc. that I started with another guy, and we developed smart composting devices.
How important was finding the Soil Food Web to this process to where you are right now?
Extremely important. Yeah, so I always, since I got into agriculture, I always felt in my gut that there was some way to grow without having to have all these inputs, especially, some of the synthetics, the nasties. But it took a while for me. I was just kind of going on faith for a while. And then once I found the Soil Food Web, it kind of started all falling into place. And so it informs what I do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I really feel that the Soil Food Web is kind of a beeline to really understanding soil health, and it really is basically your ultimate measuring tool when it comes to everything that you want to do with soil and the growth of plants.
Yeah, it's interesting. It is a tool, right? So there's so many other aspects, and I feel like sometimes we kind of get caught up in some of the specifics because it is such an important and integral tool, in my opinion, to healthy plants and healthy land, healthy animals, healthy people, healthy rest of nature, everything. But it's it's a small part of the whole. So sometimes we got to remember to take a step back and realize we're narrowing in, but there's all these other tools we can use as well.
When you started your Soil Food Web journey, was it 100% online? Did you visit Dr. Elaine's institute there in Oregon? And where did that all start?
No, it's online. Yeah, I worked a hurricane cleanup job in South Texas, working about 90 hours a week for a couple months, specifically to be able to afford the program. Just kind of put my head down and went for it. And the cool thing about that job was that there was not much to do half the time, at least. I was just sitting around. It was pretty nuts. So I actually did the foundational courses online while I was on the job. So it was a good way to really dive in deep. And so yeah, never been to see the farm or anything going on over there. And so when I started the consultant training program right after the foundation courses and just kind of rolled right into them.
So can you tell us about kind of your timeline journey going through the different stages of the Soil Food Web foundational courses, the lab tech program, and then the consultant training program, and kind of the key moments that you remembered as transitioning from an FC student and graduate, and then a CLP or lab tech, and then all the way through as a consultant?
So like I said, it was pretty quick for me with the foundational courses. I knocked them out in a month or two because I had plenty of time on my hands. I was was super interested, so I couldn't get enough of it. So it's nice. It really does lay a good foundation. That's a great word for the courses, I think. There's so much information. I was feverishly taking notes. From there I started it was before the lab tech program was started, actually. So it was just the consultant training program. So by the time that the lab tech program was created, I had already been doing this microscope work for a couple of years. And my mentor for that assisted me. I kind of breezed right through it because I had some experience. It was great for me to reiterate that I knew what I was looking at and to see some of these other organisms with them to strengthen that foundation of parts of the microscope and everything. But it was relatively easy, but definitely worth it. It was just great as far as the microscope is concerned. And then the actual consultant training is a lot of work. You have to put in a lot of effort. You end up teaching yourself a lot of it. It's like do it yourself with somebody there remotely to answer questions, assist. And then the final project is the end of the consultant training program, and that, in my experience or opinion, was really good for learning how to set up a formal experiment. Everything you need to do to be pretty rigid about controls and the test plots and how you do everything. It was a great confirmation overall that I know what I'm doing, and it was an awesome learning experience as well for me from start to finish.
So it sounds like as you got through each phase, it sounds like the phases have adapted and evolved over time to have from 2 phases, now we're at 3 phases of going through the Soul Food Web curriculum. So it's something that really hasn't stayed stagnant. It's something that is really evolving over time, it seems like. Casey, for everybody listening, I've seen him put so many posts on the CTP forum that he has like this Grandmaster tags all over, badges all over his profile there, because he has something over 400 or 500 responses to people's questions and comments and those kinds of things. So he's one of those types that has a lot of wisdom in this, that because he's been through so many scenarios, situations, has done all the study, has done all the self-study and hard work in order to get where he's at this point. So wisdom goes a long way with his experience. But for you, what was the most challenging part of getting to where you are today through the Soul Food Web School?
Sure, yeah. Appreciate the kind words. Most challenging part would be just keeping the momentum, I think. Just keeping the momentum to get it done. There is a lot of failure is probably not a good word. There are a lot of there are a lot of unsuccessful attempts at making compost or making a compost extract or a compost tea, and it can be discouraging. Just like any field, when you when you keep feeling like you're running up against a wall, you hear it over and over. It's that mentality of you just got to get back up and keep going. So just like not stopping and just taking every unsuccessful, quote unquote unsuccessful portion or a compost pile or whatever, just taking it as a learning experience and continuing to grow. There were a lot of times when I was frustrated. And then secondly, honestly, compost tea was kind of tough for me.
Starting with maybe compost, what was, I would say, something that you maybe failed or were unsuccessful in a certain type trial? What was the difference between an example of unsuccessful versus learning from that and being successful the next time?
The main thing is really getting comfortable with the process and the ingredients. So with thermophilic compost, the way that we do it, there's multiple ways to technically be unsuccessful. It either won't keep the heat cycles long enough, or if it does keep the heat cycles long enough, maybe the biology isn't up to where you want it to be in the end. So when I say unsuccessful, it could be multiple reasons, but when I was first starting out, when piles would fail, when they would drop below the required temperature too early. It's just learning how different types of materials act and react, and then for me, over time, using enough diversity of ingredients to feel really comfortable with being able to adapt the new compost ingredient that I'm not used to, but being able to relate it to something that I do know, and feeling pretty confident that I'll be able to incorporate it without a problem. So yeah, a very specific example is like beer mash. I used to use a ton of beer mash, which is a byproduct of beer making. If you use too much of it, it gets really hot really fast, but it also like peters out really quickly. And I was using it as a high nitrogen component to really get the temperature going in the pile. And I had some failed piles, and I couldn't understand why. And that was one of those learning experiences. It's just I was using too much of it and not enough of other things.
So and just for audience to know, the compost has to go through 3 thermophilic phases, at least of 131 degrees. And that's for a basically 3-day cycle. It shortens in time the higher the temperature goes, but then it has to reset, reheat, and then go through that cooking phase. And so what you're saying is like beer mash basically gets a strong peak, but then it doesn't have any residual peaks after that first one?
That's been my experience. I try not to speak in absolutes, because for everybody it's different. But from my experience, and also just talking with people over the years, that's correct. It'll get really hot really fast. I mean, it'll be super hot. After maybe the first turn, it just all that energy goes away. So if you don't have the proper mix of ingredients to keep the temperature high after a turn, sometimes the beer mash isn't enough to keep it going, in my experience.
That's interesting. I when I did my 3 piles, I did my first pile and I struggled after FC. I just tried to do everything on my own after finishing FC to understand the process. I didn't have any mentors at that time, but I had an issue with keeping heat and then returning heat back up to those high temperatures. I played around a little bit with blood meal, which was a suggestion from Scott Scamness from Crescent Soil out in California, just to reheat a pile. So I was kind of trialing and erroring after FC. It was until I got my mentor in CLP that I decided to use chicken manure, because I had used it in kind of experiments when I was just dabbling before, and chicken manure always seemed to kind of really fire up and stay kind of fired up. And I'm assuming it's possibly because the internal temperature and moisture content with keeping chicken manure, and I don't know what maybe the properties are. Maybe I should study a little bit more into it, but it got that temperature up really high, really fast, and then I turn it and it'd do it again, and then it would do it again. I had some piles I had to turn 5 times just because it kept heating up and heating up and heating up. And so I've had really good experience with chicken manure. I've tried horse and cow manure, and it heated once and never really heated again really well. So I've just had good luck with chicken manure, at least in my experience.
I'll tell you, even within one material type, it can vary widely. I mean, I've used beer mash, I've used chicken manure, I've used cow manure, horse manure, hedgehog manure. I've used alfalfa cubes from the feed store, alfalfa hay. I've used whole grains, and sometimes in combination with each other. I've used just horse manure before and had a successful pile in terms of, making it through the heating phase. There was a lot of urea in it. I mean, there was a lot of urine, so some ammonia coming out. It wasn't my favorite material, but I have gotten it to work with just horse manure. So yeah, I think it's tough. That's one of those things with the experience. You just keep going, and it's like if I have a pile that doesn't work, which doesn't happen often, but it does happen, I feed it to the worms. I feed everything to the worms anyway. I think people get too worried about it. I mean, and if you make it through, say, 2 heating cycles on half the third one, I mean, are you going to die if you use that? Probably not. It's more about best practices, and the best practices are these very specific rules that we learn for thermophilic composting. But then I always kind of relate best practices versus real world, and in the real world, things happen. You do what you got to do.
Yeah. Be sure to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss any new soul food web or homesteading content.